Hello, Cindy Folk here, author of Northern Escape. With the first anniversary of Northern Escape coming soon on June 23rd, I thought I would honor its birthday by doing a few readings. This was the proof copy that I received in the mail, the very first copy I had, and the one that I read from at the book launch on June 23rd of 2021 last year. And yeah, I've been busy with other things, so it's kind of fun to get to know it again. So I think I will read probably 4 passages here today, and I hope you enjoy them. The first is the prologue. There were 10 in the 10-passenger van. It was snug, but she didn't mind. Where they were headed, Grace wouldn't have to worry about food or lodging. Someone else was taking care of that. Someone else was in charge. It felt so good to be able to just close her eyes, blend in, and be. Her head bumped against the window in time with the tires hitting the potholes in the road. Unable to sleep, Grace listened with her eyes still closed. Her seatmate hummed to herself as she flipped through a magazine. The couple in front of her was talking about whether they'd remembered to turn off the water and lock the front door. They planned on making a phone call at the lodge. In the back seat, the wiry guy with the tattoos was strumming on his guitar. It wasn't a song that Grace recognized, and the repetition led her to believe he was monkeying around with a new song of his own. Not bad, and surprisingly not annoying, given the close quarters. Grace tried to ignore the man sitting 2 to her right. He probably didn't remember her anyway. It was years ago, and so much had happened since then. Even so, she wondered where her life might be had she made a different decision that night. She knew he was not what she needed right now either. What she needed was anything but that. The man driving seemed to be the very essence of the North. He was quiet and calm and appeared fully capable of taking this group of city dwellers to the bush for 6 days. 6 days, would that be enough? Would she know what to do when this week, not even a week, was over? Where would she go so she couldn't be found? Grace had no idea. She would have to get in touch with her dad. But how, without exposing herself or putting him in harm's way? Money, that was another issue. She needed a job that paid in cash and a place to stay. Survival was the key right now. Rattled, Grace took long, slow breaths. He doesn't know where she is. How could he? This was such a last-minute decision. Okay, this next passage is when Grace goes for a swim on the artist's retreat. They go on a day trip, and she jumps off a small cliff to go for a swim and then can't get back up. So she has to swim to a neighboring island, and this is what she discovers there. The island was maybe 60 feet by 100, with a few spruce trees providing some shelter from the wind and sun. It contained lots of the flat rock of the Canadian Shield, and away from the trees, Grace lay down on one in an attempt to dry off and get some warmth back in her bones. She dozed off for a few minutes and woke to the sound of a loon yodeling a little offshore. The sound did much to calm her soul, and she smiled to herself. Tucking one leg under, she rolled to the side and pushed herself up. After stretching an arm across her body, Grace began to stroll around the little island. Roots poked through patches of hard earth and lush moss in the perfect shade of green. That covered the ground in all the nooks and crannies where water had gathered. Near the end of the island, the ground sloped more naturally toward the water, making it an ideal place to pull up a canoe. Her eye caught some disturbed ground, and she realized that someone else had thought the same thing not long ago. Turning to head back to the south shore from which she came, something caught her eye. Moss hanging loosely from a join in the tree looked a little out of place. On closer inspection, Grace saw that it wasn't attached, and as she went to move it, the corner of a black plastic box was revealed. What is that, she thought. Realization dawned just as Grace questioned what she was saying. No, it wasn't a camper's forgotten first aid kit. This must be one of those geocaches they had been talking about last night at happy hour. Cautiously, she reached up and removed the box from its hiding place. Okay, the first night that they arrive at Thompson Lake, Grace has a little bit of trouble sleeping. And as she lays in the dark, she hears someone else moving around in the ladies' cabin, and it's Margot. And Margot is there on the trip as a journalist and a photographer. So she's heading out on the lake in the middle of the night to try to catch the aurora borealis. So Grace decides to join her. So they canoe to the middle of the lake, and this is what they see. They watched, mesmerized, as the aurora moved in effortless motion across the canvas of the night sky, morphing from a swooping arch to a wide band of shimmering green, snaking its way to encompass more of the dark space above them. Closer now, it hovered over the canoe, creating a canopy that seemed so alive, it appeared to catch the dreams of those who watched it. Or perhaps it contained the spirits of all those who have gone before and sends their messages. They spoke with a faint hum. Grace closed her eyes to listen and sensed their happiness, their contentment, their love of all that is life. In a hushed voice, Margot spoke, still looking at the air above her. They say the aurora borealis is created when the sun's particles travel through space and combine with the Earth's magnetic field. When the particles hit the atmosphere, they give up their energy to atoms and molecules of gases to create the colors found in the northern lights. Not only does this give us the beautiful colors, but if you're away from the city and other sounds, you can hear a faint hum or even a clapping sound. I thought I could hear it before, but it was very faint. They listened in silence. I guess with equipment, it sounds very much like someone turning a dial on an old AM radio. Depending on the night, the density of the particles, etc., there are many different sounds that are created. Margot spoke into the quiet of the night. Grace wished they could hear it better. The low-frequency electromagnetic waves whistle, growl, tweet. They can even sound like a group of otherworldly frogs singing a song. Grace laughed to herself. I'm sure they must have created some folklore around it. No doubt, Margot agreed. The Earth is old, and I'm sure the borealis has been around for just as long. Grace considered the magnitude of time and the immensity of the systems and galaxies beyond her own and felt small, insignificant. Strangely, it helped. Her problems seemed less important now. Okay, this next excerpt is a little bit later on in the book when Grace is back at the lodge, trying to interpret some of the messages that they have found in the geocache boxes. I'll just read a little bit of this section to you. Back in the living room, she marched to the deep emerald green chair and pulled up at the ottoman. Plunking herself down, she stretched one leg out and set it on the footrest, then crossed her ankles with the other before opening her journal. Grace flattened the pieces of paper from the cache that Sebastian had given her and reviewed the quotes again. She reached to turn on the floor lamp behind her so she could read it better in the cloud-darkened lodge. 1. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. Henry David Thoreau. Grace wrote in her journal, what did Xander like about this particular passage? He, like Henry David Thoreau, went into the woods. In what way did he wish to live deliberately? Maybe it was just as simple as that. He deliberately went to the woods, possibly for a specific pre-planned reason. He might have been saying that he went to the woods canoe camping with the intent of considering his life, his purpose. He may have been hoping to make a decision of some sort. Rereading the quote, Grace felt from what she'd heard of him that Xander didn't need to worry about not living enough in his life. He didn't let moss grow under his feet. But what puzzled Grace, worried her, was, when I came to die, did he mean in the distant future or a more immediate one? Glancing out the window, it looked like they might get some more rain. A cold rush of wind through the open window told her she was right. 2. If a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music which he hears, however measured or far away. Henry David Thoreau. Grace thought for a moment. Are there companions he can't keep pace with? Maybe his school friends? Or maybe he doesn't have any friends who can keep up with him. Given that Xander only let Sebastian know where he was going, maybe he's one of the companions he was referring to. But why him? Xander certainly marches to a different drummer than most. He does not sound typical, and perhaps that makes him feel alone. On this quest, he's marching to his own drumbeat, to his own music. Where is it taking him? That's the question that seemed to be consuming her. Okay, one final passage, and I don't think it gives too much away. I will change the name of one individual, so there's no spoiler. I will change the name to George, and I think then we can read this. Grace sprinted forward and jumped with all the confidence she could muster. She did not allow herself to scream on the way down. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. She plummeted like a bullet and plunged deep into the rushing water, the powerful current immediately pulling her down. Surfacing, Grace took a big breath and forced her face into the water. Kicking with all her might, she hoped to get far enough out that if he jumped in after her, the current would take them in 2 different directions. The waves were at least 2 to 3 feet above Grace's head. She made a valiant attempt to swim up the waves and keep her head above water, but as wave after wave came, she tired and was pulled to the center of the river. There, the churning waters flipped her backward. George stood at the edge of the cliff, watching. She saw his smirk as a wave crashed over her. She realized she could no longer time her breath with the waves and was unable to get the air she needed before the next one hit. Grace tried to stay calm, but as the waves engulfed her face over and over again, She screamed for help with the little air that she had left in the hopes that anyone would be there to pull her out if she lost consciousness. The water dragged Grace to where the rivers merged, and the waves came both from the left and right. She prayed the current wouldn't pull her down to the bottom of the river as Cody had said it could. Time slowed as she awaited her fate. She thanked God when the current pushed her to the right of center and she wasn't dragged under. So there you have it, Northern Escape, a few excerpts for you. If you haven't read it, give it a try. You can purchase it on Amazon if you Google Northern Escape Cindy Folk, and you can get either a paperback version or an ebook. If you have read it, it would be wonderful if you would go to Amazon and leave a review, or even just send me a text and let me know what you thought of it. I would really appreciate it. Reviews are really helpful for selling future books, and they don't all have to come at the beginning of the book launch phase. It can happen throughout. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. And I am working on the sequel to Northern Escape. I believe it will be called River Retreat, and it's a continuation of this story. My first rough draft is done, but I need to get busy at re-editing it and getting it to the finish line. So yes, so all the best to you, and thank you for listening, and I will see you soon. Thanks, bye.